Hello. As we talk about in this conference issues of luxury, craftsmanship, value, function, emotion, and authenticity, I can think of no better or more relevant artist to discuss these, to share his work with us than Tom Sachs. He is manically prolific. His resume is 44 pages long with no filler in it. A few years ago, he created at the Lever House monumental Hello Kitties, which he cast in precious bronze and then painted over in white to resemble his beloved foam core. He also loves duct tape and plywood. A few years ago, he took over the 55,000 square feet of the Park Avenue Armory for a manned space program to Mars. His astronauts hacked away at the concrete floor, removing rock specimens, which he then analyzed in his laboratory. His process is entirely transparent. His hand is everywhere. It is never hidden. It is always celebrated. He is a very, very human artist. Welcome, Tom Sachs.
Thanks, Deborah. Hi. I am Tom Sachs. I'm a sculptor. I live in New York City. I'm 48 years old. And I just thought I'd show you a picture of something I made when I was 11 years old for my dad. It's a Nikon FM2 camera. He really wanted it, and he couldn't afford it, so I made it in school. And it became, in a way, a prophecy for the way I'd make things 30 years later. It's called sympathetic magic, when you build a model of your enemy's fort and burn it down, or a voodoo doll, or you make a model of your leg that's hurt and you bring it to your religious leader and you pray to it as a way of healing. It's called an ex voto. Some people also call this stuff cargo cults or cargo cultism. But when I graduated from college, I really wanted a Mondrian. This is Mondrian's Broadway Boogie Woogie. And I realized if I was going to get my own Mondrian, I was going to have to go down to Wall Street, make a bunch of money, and then go and change it into art. Can I? Thanks. Have that. Great. And so I thought, well, that's not the kind of compromise I want to make with my life. What kind of compromise am I willing to make? And I thought, well, the compromise I'm willing to make is maybe with something called authenticity. So I went to the Museum of Modern Art. I made a model of this out of duct tape or gaffer's tape, which is a material I feel much more comfortable with than oil paint. It's not a forgery, but it's a model. And I realized after a while that I probably spent more time with this painting than Eli Broad, who owns it, because I was able to study it. And the greatest advantage of being an artist is to be a student my whole life. And at the same time, my studio's down on Canal Street, or near Canal Street, which was the industrial surplus center of New York City, where old machines were bought and sold, the machines that we used to defeat the Nazis by outproducing them. And as those stores became obsolete, they were replaced by places that sold fake luxury goods, like Gucci sunglasses and Birkin bags. And I thought, God, these sunglasses are great because they're the most democratic object there is. It's if you leave a pair of $5 Gucci sunglasses behind in a restaurant, you're not going back for them. They don't own you. You own them because you can dispose of them. And I realized that they weren't fake Gucci sunglasses. They were just simply unauthorized. And as a result, there were different advantages. So I thought I would read to you from Scripture today of James Brown. After man make everything he can, you know that man makes money to buy from other man. Time is the one thing that we can't buy. We try to buy time by spending on durable goods. We build huts and fortresses against the elements and invaders so we can develop our science and ultimately our art. The goal for many people is to retire to make shaker furniture in their garage. And I'm going to brag for a split second and say that's what I get to do all the time, is make shaker furniture in my garage. Art is the least most valuable thing there is. And it's not just because it's the world's largest unregulated commodities market, but it's because it's the highest expression of our work and thus serves to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. After we have secured our prosperity, we turn first to our interests, then our hobbies, and then when we're lucky and we work hard, our work becomes art. So I work 7 days a week. I don't take vacation because I love my work and it defines me. And through my work, the objects I create become an authentic expression of my life. Like that painting that Mondrian was really way more authentic to me than organizing money to buy it because it represented my circumstances, just like that camera and everything else that you'll see today. So part of my job is living an interesting life and an inspiring life to myself, and that's why I force myself to travel, my mind through literature, my body through the ritual of vacation. So I thought we could maybe sit down and look at a couple of slides and stuff, and this is Chanel Guillotine Breakfast Nook. And
for the not very skilled tagger.
well, spray paint, writing with a spray paint can is a serious craft, and it's to be taken seriously.
That was a low level of craftsmanship there.
I think it was done in haste, but I think they got the message across. Art is the supreme luxury because it's the thing that, like I was saying, it's the thing that we do with our extra time. With Chanel Guillotine Breakfast Nook, I'm able to explore my dark side through the dark side of my fascination with weapons of mass destruction, but also the dark side of consumerism, planned obsolescence, its evil twin brother, perceived obsolescence, coercive advertising. And because I'm part of the system, my art's very expensive, I can't afford to buy it, and I use and consume luxury goods, which we can talk about. But because of that, I feel that I'm authorized to speak on this subject because I'm not just a critic of it.
You're a complicit user of luxury items.
Absolutely, and I think that's important for us to understand both sides of the coin. To take advantage of our situations to make heirloom products. Art is when it's consecrated by posterity, it is a supreme luxury object.
So how is something like this not propaganda? Are you, by putting together the Chanel logo and a guillotine, a weapon of violence, are you making a comment about consumer culture? Are you trying to send a specific message, or are you just having an exploration?
Well, I think if I were sending a specific message, I would be a propagandist. And I love propaganda, but it's not my thing. My secret formula for success is 1 + 1 = 1,000,000. And this isn't just the sum is the whole is more than the whole of the parts. It's magic. And it's
so you put two unrelated things together and something happens. It inspires.
In another way. And it's sort of, I can't remember who said it, but, well, I know. It's actually John Ferguson, my former studio assistant, said, any two things in the world are connected by a third. The secret is figuring out what that third thing is. And that's why you have to spend a tremendous amount of time understanding and accepting yourself so you can have the courage to make just the right wrong decision. And I don't think this is specific to art. I think this applies to anyone who's solving a difficult problem.
What was there, so this is part of a series of work. There
are more after this.
Okay, there's an Hermes Happy Meal.
We can go.
Okay, why don't you talk about
this is a
these?
Tiffany Glock. This is made out of Tiffany packaging, and it's the gun that the police carry in New York City, and I really wanted one, just like I wanted a Mondrian, and I kind of wanted a guillotine, sort of. But and so I made this out of cardboard, and then went to the store and bought, with the money that I made, and bought a Glock.
Oh, interesting.
That had a license to carry until I got over that ridiculously juvenile phase. But and what was fabulous about the Glock was it came in this plastic Tupperware container, and it has like 60% plastic parts. And I had been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and there was a beautiful Tiffany's Smith & Wesson revolver collaboration that's in
Oh,
the
that's
Arms and Armor
interesting.
section. That was my inspiration. I thought, if that happened now out of a plastic gun, how would it be? It wouldn't be anything like this. But what was important to me was that this was real Tiffany packaging. Mm-hmm. And similarly, the Hermes value meal is made out of Hermes packaging.
Have you heard from any luxury companies about how they feel about these objects?
You know,
Do you care?
Again, the sympathetic magic is this term that, for those of you who don't know, and forgive me for those of you who do know, I'm going to screw this up, but the idea is it's a word to describe Aboriginal cultures, like in New Guinea, in particular the cargo cultists, who missionaries came by plane and boat, and they said, wow, they drop food from the skies, and these ships come from the skies and bring food, and then you have these containers that are propane powered, and food comes out of them. How do we do that? And they laughed, and the anthropologist laughed, said, well, you need a runway or a dock to build these things. So these guys built runways and docks and models of planes, and
Believing that the food would
magically come, and
if they had runways and docks.
And sure enough, more anthropologists came to see these runways and docks and traded iron axes for their stone axes, and they started.
I see. So it actually did fuel their economy and bring food to
and screw up their Aboriginal culture and all that.
Yes.
But it didn't happen the way they planned it,
Right.
and that's why it's magic. It doesn't always happen the way you want it to, and so all of these, or many brands have come to me, and I never asked for permission. I always believe it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. Clearly, the artist who did that spray work would never have gotten away with it if they'd asked, and they were totally successful in getting it up there now.
But so you've married the ultimate kind of artisanal product with the ultimate mass-produced food product here.
Right, and so here it's a great example of forgive these slides, they don't show how messy and terribly made all of my work is. I'm very dedicated to showing the glue drips and the screw heads and all the evidence, or what Alexander Calder would term the scars of labor. And up close you'll see some of that stuff. In particular, this is a boom box that's made out of plywood. But again, the plywood is painted first and then cut, so you can see all the wood grain as evidence that I was here.
And why is it so important to you to show the evidence of your handiwork?
Well, there's a slide that we may get to or may not about ceramics, but recently I've been making sculptures in porcelain. And Damien, if you find the picture of the little NASA cup, you can put that up. I don't know what number it is. Damien
I think they're not allowed to go out of order. Oh, look, they did it.
Damien is the guy backstage, so when we talk, he's looking at a screen. There's a little prompter that tells him when to move the slide.
Oh, okay, great.
So this button, I'm really into transparency, sorry guys. You push this button, there's a little green arrow here, and there's a green arrow that Damien gets to see backstage.
Oh, really? So that's
there's
sort of
a red
sympathetic
arrow.
magic.
In a way, it's extremely analog
Okay.
from the 50s. So I make bowls out of shawan. This is a tea bowl made out of porcelain, not stoneware in the traditional manner you'd make it out of stoneware, which is a groggy, earthy kind of clay. But this is made of porcelain, which makes your toilets and disc brakes. And to me, it's very important to use porcelain, not just because it's modern and pure and white, but because it's so fine that it captures the fingerprints. And if we look at our iPhones, these 50,000 years of man making stuff have culminated in this object that's completely robot-made. There's no evidence of that a human being was made, yet it's the most handy thing that we've come across.
So does that mean it's not a luxury item if there's no kind of hand to it?
I think it brings to question what luxury really means. To me, the greatest luxury is art because it's above and beyond all shelter. I think great brands.
What did you call it? You had a really interesting term.
The least
valuable.
The least most valuable thing there is. And you look at it like a Kelly bag or something, which is incredibly handmade, but you could never have a stain or an error. It would be rejected because it's too expensive. And so there's this tightrope line that luxury goods walk between reliability and performance. I mean, think about, like, to me, the most luxurious car in the world is like a Subaru, not a Ferrari. Because,
do tell, why?
Well, the Japanese figured out that no one likes to change the oil in their car. And you could have your Subaru in the garage for like 20 years and completely neglect it. You could drive it for 20 years without changing the oil, and it's always going to get you there. And reliability and safety is the most important thing. I mean, do you really care what seat you're in on the plane? No, you want to get there fastest.
Really? No.
Well, given the choice between
the seat at the back in the bathroom, by the bathroom, that smells bad and doesn't go back.
Versus 2 layovers. Think about it. We've all been stuck with this possibility, and it's an interesting thing to. And the reason why it's important is because of time.
Right. Right. So I think one thing that's interesting to me about your work is it brings up all these ideas about what makes something valuable. And we've talked about it a little bit in other panels, and that function at a luxury level is not the most important thing, or is not a defining aspect of luxury. I mean, art doesn't serve a utilitarian function.
It's not.
It serves an emotional function. It serves an aesthetic function. It serves a kind of higher, the same way that an appreciation for certain kinds of luxury and craftsmanship.
Art's extremely expensive. It's expensive to buy, and it's expensive to make. It's very expensive to maintain and protect. There's a tremendous amount of mechanism around it, surrounding the stuff that's consecrated, whether it's a gallery or a museum or books or history and academia and study. And to build these things takes tremendous amount of energy. And in my studio, I have a studio of 10 people that I work with, and it's a teaching hospital. We're all learning from each other.
What's it called? It has some funny name.
My studio, well, the nickname is Allied Cultural Prosthetics, and because it used to be Allied Machinery Exchange, and once upon a time I thought that I've been really against the idea of art, and I thought that it was a cultural prosthetic. It's an exchange for things that are ritually important. Like churches don't mean as much, so we have other ways of finding spirituality. We use military things to break the laws of nature, like stealth bombers and smart technologies and stuff. So to me, I've always really tried to understand art as being outside of the art system, but just what does it really do for our lives?
Right. So that's a lot of this is questioning the practice of art itself. It seems like.
Absolutely. If we
let's look at more
Damien,
slides.
if we go back to.
I love how this is so pretend. Now you're talking to a man in the back.
Yeah.
That's great.
Damien's pushing the button. So let's go to the one after the boombox, please, which is probably the 5th slide. Is about this is the larger brother of that boombox with a Barcelona pavilion made out of foam core and metal. And this is just so you know, my greed and desire for consumer goods is not limited to paintings, but also includes the world of real estate. And this is Le Corbusier's Unité de Habitation in Marseille, and this is one of the most important utopian buildings ever. This was the model for socialized housing after World War II in Europe. He had plans to build 1,500 of them. I think there were 1.5 of them made, or 2.5. But this is the only fully realized example. And of course, it's now been looted of its Prouvé fixtures, and it's one of the, what's a super luxury area in Marseille.
So now the luxury item is the sculpture itself.
Yes,
point.
and to go back, sorry, this is in the collection of the Guggenheim Foundation, and the reason why it's important to look at is because it's the, just to go back to the boombox, it's the same exact size as that boombox. It's 18 feet high. So it's now, Japanese tourists own units in Unité as art objects.
Fascinating.
But this is really an expression of my appreciation for Le Corbusier as the greatest architect of the 20th century. But
so it's a study of his work, too. I mean, it's about the process of understanding.
Well, this is a man who really believed, like, maybe the only other one I could compare him to would be Buckminster Fuller, who believed that you could solve some of the world's problems through architecture, or at least you could eliminate some of the big ones. But if you compare Le Corbusier's failures in doing that with Ray Kroc's successes of,
all right, let's talk about Ray Kroc.
Serving, Ray Kroc's the guy who sort of invented McDonald's, or took McDonald's to warp speed, and was celebrated and derided for doing that. I mean, imagine McDonald's as this mom and pop hamburger place, the darling of Wall Street, and then becomes successful, and it's the target of every bad joke, and it's now represents how we're destroying the planet by overproducing things and factory farming, incredible cruelty to animals, and obesity. Although I don't think you can blame McDonald's, you can only blame yourself for obesity. But at the same time, you cannot deny that no one has served more meals while killing fewer people than McDonald's. There's a loss of humanity, but there's an incredible advancement in safety. And I think it sort of looks like everything else, like the quality of our cell phone, our telephone communications has gone to the toilet, but it's so cheap now. Like we talk on cell phone, we don't have great landlines. The quality of when we listen.
Yeah, I think we've given up thinking that like telephone conversation should have good quality.
Yeah, give me convenience or give me death.
Right,
and
okay.
And think about the way you listen to music now. We listen to terrible little MP3s. I'm not like an audio guy, but you can hear the difference. Mm-hmm. And it's true of everything. Our photography, we've all become great photographers, but we don't print our photographs, so I don't even know how to do that anymore.
Right.
I mean,
right.
I make things.
Right.
So.
Show me more pictures.
Yeah, we can march on a little bit. My greed is not even limited to Earth, but to the cosmos, and this is a full-scale lunar lander that, and these next 10 images are about the space program.
Great.
So I can get into maybe the ritual of work a little bit. What we went to the moon and then later to Mars, and what we were not able to do with real rockets, we did with this is one of our thrusters, the FM Static, makes great noise. And this is our mission control system, where all of our special effects are organized and represented to you on 15 telescreens and one gigantic 20-foot telescreen. Our two astronauts, Commander Iannarino and Lieutenant Ratanarat, go to...
So what are they wearing?
So they're wearing Tyvek, homemade Tyvek portable life support systems.
So you've made everything here. This is
so thank you. I forget. But everything is made by me in the shop. And just to show you, this lander is made of plywood and Schedule 40 pipe from Home Depot and a ladder from the hardware store. And everything here and everything that I make always is out of non-exotic transparent material so that you can see how it's made. I mean, this thing is disgusting in real life. I promise you, you will be disappointed when you see my work. And yet I do not know how to photograph it better than this, without using macro photography.
But it's not all that different from the Gucci sunglasses.
Well, it's
It works in the same. I mean,
It works in the same way. I mean, when I say we really went to the moon and we really went to Mars, it's because we realized details about the space program that are so intricate that they become real. It's not unlike the martial artist who studies his whole life to throw and kick punches and how to kill people, and he's accosted in a dark alley one night.
I mean, your team studied with NASA. You did exercises every day. You prepared your bodies physically.
The space program, NASA, and I'll tell you about one, if we have time, one brand collaboration that I did do with Nike. That's the exception. But NASA came to us. I did a residency at Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, where the entry, descent, landing team came to us, led by Greg Vane, and they said, hey, you should go to, Obama said we should give up Bush's idea of going back to the moon, and we should go to Mars, and we'll help you retrofit your space program to go to Mars.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we went to Mars because of this space, because of JPL. But, oh, now I lost my train of thought.
All right, but so those people are all in outfits that you've made.
So by realizing details to an extreme degree, for us, it becomes real. This is astronauts securing the surface of the planet using a shotgun because we're Americans and that's how we roll.
I mean, it's also quite. I mean, this whole process is an artisanal process. I mean, it's about the celebration of process rather than
absolutely, because it's the work. It's not that you have to do 50 push-ups. It's that you have the luxury and you get to do 50 push-ups. It's the experience of work. It's not the abs that you get from dieting. It's the way you feel. And if you do it enough, maybe you'll wind up with abs and maybe you won't. It's depending on the priority. But the goal is work, and the reward for good work is more work, because it's the only way that we can realize ourselves. Could you imagine being paid really well for doing a job that you didn't love? Can you imagine a greater hell than that?
I think some people can, yes.
Well, take a look.
Yeah, no,
Take a look around. I mean, it's important. It's freedom.
Yes, it's freedom.
Everything,
which I think
everything else is then, if the alternative is that those $600 Gucci sunglasses own your ass.
Yeah, but you're going back for them.
Because you're going back for them, and they're more important than your day. And there's nothing.
But they have a
more
higher
important.
quality, and they will last longer in your life. And
they might, unless you lose them. And yeah, of course, the quality is UV protection. They're made in. Right. They're made in Italy instead of China. Mm-hmm. Probably better working conditions, certainly better quality. Everything's better, but in terms of a status object, it's indistinguishable. Just have to get through the jackhammering up the gallery floor again, not asking permission. Returning samples to Earth. This is Neil Armstrong in the laboratory doing the same exercise. Dave Scott in the Lunar Receiving Lab looking at the Genesis rock. This is our biology lab where we grow poppies. This is way too involved in a process collecting poppies and using them in the ritual hand washing that we do before any religion. And our religion, what we bring to Mars is hip hop and the tea ceremony.
That's what you brought to Mars.
We decided if we were going to, astronauts scrub everything down so we don't contaminate other planets. Right. It's a huge issue. And did anyone read the New York Times last week that or maybe it was in Kurzweil AI, that they sent bacteria to space and it was able to survive re-entry in the incredible heat. So that means life is on other planets. I mean, that's what it means to me. That's proof enough. Or we came from other planets. So this is our tea ceremony with our astronauts performing the best of what the Earth can bring to another planet.
Because you believe in the tea ceremony.
I just believe that it's
ritual. And
I believe
practice.
in the ritual of it. I mean, Alan Watts made it possible for us lefty liberals to enjoy religion. But my aunt, who's in the religion industry, told me that Zen is not a religion; it's a philosophy. And I was, damn, I still don't fit in. It's hard. Trying. So
let's take a look at a few more slides, and then I think we should take questions.
Sure.
But no, keep going.
I mean, there's so many, but this is an interesting object. This is a sub-zero refrigerator, which is something I've always loved and wanted. And especially living in Lower Manhattan, I don't know how many times you've been to someone's house and have seen only a pint of Haagen-Dazs and a bottle of Stoli in the freezer. So there are these like Donald Judd-like monoliths to eternal coldness. So this is a Sub-Zero. You can't open it. This doesn't work, unlike most of my work, but yeah. So, I'm just going to skip ahead a couple. That's a Bosendorfer made from scratch, and this is a Donald Judd chair made of IKEA, because IKEA is the 4th largest wood consumer on the planet, and every day in every city in the developed world there are hundreds of tons of IKEA being thrown out. And I thought there was a great crime in that. And if you go to the IKEA website, there's some great language about making it so everyone's dreams can come true, so everyone can have furniture.
Well, is this sort of the democratic rationalization?
It's sort of the same idea
as fast fashion,
as the Gucci sunglasses, but a Donald Judd chair that costs
the $5 Gucci. Yeah.
$20,000. But the reality is that then the other side of it is that IKEA is not
furniture.
An heirloom product.
Right.
And it's actually very expensive, because you're buying it every time you have to move, and for young people that gets expensive. And so here I decided I was going to make, by hook or by crook, one piece of IKEA last forever by imbuing it with all the posterity that my career has. Here it's wrapped in carbon fiber over particle board and epoxy resin. So there is, I've done everything in my power to make
this a sustainable object,
yeah,
or at least an object that
I've chosen the design of Donald Judd, which is consecrated as the most expensive plywood furniture ever made. And so I'm trying to do everything I can. I don't know if I will succeed or not.
But you've kept that one bit out of a landfill.
This one bit at great expense.
Yeah.
Tremendous, ridiculous, embarrassing, backwards
expense
technology.
To you?
Yeah, because carbon fiber and resin is extremely toxic. It's expensive. It's very slow. It's an artisanal process. It's the same. We use West Systems epoxy. That's a brand that I endorse, made by Gojon Brothers, and it's a.
We're not taking endorsements here, even for your duct tape brand.
So we probably have too many to go through. I don't know.
Just go through a few, and then we'll open it up to questions.
So this is the symbol of our space program, the cinder block made of plywood. Again, mainly because when you go to another culture and you knock down the round buildings and you replace them with square, rectangular, occidental buildings, you set up a cinder block factory. Sort of just after you set up the church, you set up the cinder block factory, and that's our symbol of colonialism. Sorry, try not to use the word. I slipped. These are all pictures of Sev, the milk cup.
I think this is, talk about this, because I think this is very interesting, particularly to a luxury audience. Yeah. Because talk about the original Sev factory and these.
So right before the revolution, Sev was this, actually I'll go back to, was this about half an hour south of Paris, this factory that still makes great porcelain. And it was so decadent that at the time to build a tea set from Sev, it would cost as much as a whole farm. And Madame de Pompadour.
So there's no comparable luxury today. I mean,
I don't think, because you don't have the disparity. I mean, you've got things like Mastige. You've got things like the New York Times, the Tea magazine makes its luxury is accessible to a huge market. You can buy a deck of playing cards from a luxury brand.
But also creating things doesn't cost as much, even creating incredibly high-end luxury. I mean, nothing's going to cost.
True. There isn't the disparity of wealth. You didn't have the poverty that led to the religion, although you could argue that you have it in some of the places that these things are made.
All right, so what is this piece?
So this is one of the most famous vases. The Wallace collection is the best place in London, but at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, you'll see this vase, and it's an elephant vase made of slip cast porcelain. And mine is made of foam core and plastic schlag animals, and you can see all the screws, and it's got the pentagram on it, and it was terrible here because the guilt that I felt destroying this poor plastic elephant.
Those Schleich animals, yeah.
Butchering it to make its feet, but the important thing to remember is that in the court, if you didn't have enough Sev, according to Madame de Pompadour, you were not cool. So you found there were bourgeois people in the 18th century buying fake
Sev. So there was fake.
paper mache porcelain.
So then you have your dubbed version of that. I think we've gone over a little bit, but is there one or two questions that we can take?
I'll just skip through.
For Tom? Yes.
You'd mentioned that you don't work with brands in particular, but that you had worked with Nike, but then you didn't elaborate. And I was
Sure.
curious what that was.
Well, so super long story short, Mark eventually, through a friendship that I developed with Mark Parker, the CEO of Nike, we had a long conversation through a series of interviews. I interviewed him for a couple of magazines, and we had a conversation, and I was talking about planned obsolescence and how Nike has 4,000 stock keeping units, and yet it's this company built in innovation. You know, how can you sleep at night? And Mark and I would go back and forth saying, you know, we do a lot of great stuff, which is true. And eventually he said to me, you think you can do better, why don't you try? So we built this collaboration after 5 years of negotiation, another 5 years of building, 3 years of negotiation, 5 years of actually building it. We built Nike Craft, and this is the shoe. And it's a completely transparent project. It has the transparency of how it was made and all the materials themselves. So these are all native materials. That's what rubber looks like on the toe. That's what polyurethane looks like on the midsole. That's natural pig skin. And the upper is Vectran, which came from my friends at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So, which is 100 times stronger than nylon. It's using the airbags for the Mars Science Laboratory that bounce down. And at the same time, we made the swoosh red as a way of communicating this is a branded product. So I tried even to make the branding of it transparent. And this is a small capsule collection, and each box came with information on how it was made. It had a little propaganda zine. A zine is like a homemade pamphlet or magazine. And then there was a jacket that said proudly made in Vietnam on the outside of it. There's a men's trench coat on the inside. There's a periodic table so you can win bar fights about science. And an airbag bag that was, again, with Vectran materials. So.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.
Don't forget your computer. Oops. Oops. Okay, I'll see you in 1 second. So I'd like to just introduce Francesco Bonami to the stage. He is a curator, author, editor, critic, and a provocateur in